Evening, ladies, gentlemen, MBs, and hopefully you can hear my voice now and you don't have to hire yourself a lip reader. Sorry about the technical issues there. We're back. I'm Shadon, and this is Warui Deshou's second stream covering Decadence, the, surprise smash hit, like, amazing show of the otherwise cursed hell year that is 2020. The potential Izoken killer. We're getting close to that point now, aren't we? I mean, there's only 2 episodes left. 2 episodes. If it sticks the landing, it'll be better than Izoken. And, Doc, like, if I had said to you, like, in say April, that, oh, would you believe it? There's going to be an anime in 2020, like the worst fucking year ever, that is better than Keep Your Hands Off Izoken. You'd have had license to commit me to a place that doesn't even have a single padded cell. It's just a box. That's where you can put me. Because you'd think I was crazy. You'd think I was talking complete nonsense or speaking in tongues. But no, we're here talking about this amazing show that's come pretty much out of nowhere. New studio, new concepts. It's not adapted from a light novel or a video game or anything that I'm aware of. And it's just incredible. And it continues to be incredible, as we'll elaborate in this Queen podcast. But yes, I'm Shadon, and joining me from across the pond, close by, all the way from Tennessee, it's the Subtle Doctor.
Hello, fam. I hope everybody is doing well and is as safe and healthy as possible. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying your Friday. Love to podcast on a Friday. And like, so happy that we have something just unequivocally, straight up, no frills good. I mean, will we have nitpicks? Sure. But we have this thing that we can really be enthusiastic about, just to talk about it. Because it's like been a week, man. I don't know about you. Well, actually, I do know about you because we were just talking about it. But I don't know about you out there.
I do know about you. You said that in such a way, like as if you knew that I had some like secret personality disorder or something that the public doesn't know about. I know about.
I know about you. I know about your issues. Okay, we don't need
to.
Oh
man,
no.
I mean,
but I hope. No, I hope everybody out there, like, if you haven't had a shitty week, like, you're doing better than us. But if you have, it's Friday now. It's like either over or almost over, and you get to hang out with a really bad anime podcast and talk about a really, really good show. I'm pumped. This is going to be a good discussion. I can feel it in whatever is like I was going to say my bones, but it's a deeper level than that. What's deeper than bones that you feel things in?
The soul?
Is the soul deeper than bones? This is a question. We should do a poll.
Oh no! Like, are we going to get on that? Like, is this the point where we're going to come up with our own version of that Galaxy Brain meme? Like, bones, soul, whatever.
Yes.
God. Feel free to come up with that, by the way, if you want, folks. But anyway, yes, we're here to discuss Decadence. And we're going to be going through our usual stuff here for second stream format, which is we're going to talk about the creators for a little bit. We're going to go into patron questions. We'll then also do our long form talk on like various talking points we've got about the show. We are covering episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10 this week. Ooh. The reason we're doing that is because unfortunately Doc, was the victim of a miscast Wrath of God and had to unfortunately not be around one Friday due to a tornado warning, which thankfully did not, get him. He didn't have to twist again like he did last summer, so that's fine. We're all good. But
that's good. I like that.
But subsequently, as a result, we had to do Brand New Animal a week after, and then because we have a schedule, it kind of pushes everything along. So we're playing catch up here, so that way we don't end up then causing problems with the new shows we'll be covering for the fall season. Or is it autumn? I don't know. I can never tell like how anime seasons work. It always seems like it's one ahead or one behind from what I think it is, but you get my point.
You were right, though. It is the fall.
Oh,
coming up next month, fall. What gets me is that
coming out next. Why is the game re-released? It's the fall remaster.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. The upres. We've just done an upres on fall, and it should be really good. We worked out the bugs, but we haven't changed any of the core gameplay because we know you love it, and we don't want to mess with what's already good. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The fall coming to you. The Fall is an actual game. I think it's an adventure game, by the way. An episodic one that I don't know if they've even finished. I know 2 episodes are out. It was supposed to be pretty fun. Anyway, old PC games that people don't care about. Hello, Go-Go Atomic Robot, and Yukinon if you're still there.
You can
Welcome,
mute
everyone.
himself now. He's being equitable with us.
Okay, thank you.
He's showing solidarity. How good of it. So, if you're not familiar to this format because you're joining us late, maybe you're catching this when it's gone free to air. Our second stream format omits a lengthy. Well, in fact, we kind of omitted that in general now, but we don't really do a plot summary or summation of the episodes that we've covered.
Do you want to do the whole? Can you summarize it in 2 minutes?
No, because I can't. No, not a chance. I can't. I can't do that. So what instead we're going to do is, of course, we're going to go through talking points and Patreon questions, and we'll provide context as we go, where it's appropriate.
Yep. But
Keep
also
things nice and streamlined.
Yeah. But also we have one creator in particular to talk about. But first, before we do that, let me remind everyone to follow Warui Deshou on Twitter. It is kind of our go-to place for communication for most things, apart from the Discord. Where we talk to patrons. But yeah, follow us there. You can see when streams go live. You can get our comments on things. You can get whenever the podcast goes public and the YouTube videos that we do. We don't always put those on Discord, and it's hard to have a single feed for everything. The Patreon gets most things, but like YouTube can't really be incorporated into that, or at least we haven't done that. So yeah, on Twitter, and you can talk back to us. You can interact with us lovely hosts there. So yeah, follow WD on Twitter. And also, we have a Patreon if you'd like to support us financially. It's at patreon.com/WARUI-DESHOU, Warui Deshou. And everyone watching and listening now is, of course, a patron. But when this goes free to air, I suspect many people will not be. But head on over there and you can get all sorts of crazy wild benefits. You can be part of group watches, game nights. You can ask questions that we have to answer. You can get exclusive podcasts. You could get I just had something else. Oh, you could get to be part of our Discord, which is such fun. So head on over there and subscribe if you are able to, if you see anything you like.
You get to engage in sick banter. What more do you want?
Sick banter. Yes.
Yeah, sick banter. What more could you possibly want? And all for just like, $2 or whatever your local currency denomination is in exchange per month.
Mm-hmm.
You can cut out a cup of coffee from your life. Come on, give us some change. I'm just saying.
Excuse me while I go and trademark the name Sick Banter. I'd like to create a rap faction, a group, and we'll be called Sick Banter. Really,
love a bit of Sick Banter.
Really quickly, episode directors for this set of episodes. We've talked about two of them, Yuji Oya and Hideyuki Satake. Satake directed episode 3. Oya directed episode 4. But we have to talk about Hiroyasu Aoki, who directed episode number 9 of Deca-Dence, also did the storyboard for episode 9. A smallish CV. So this person appears to be on the newer side to the industry. Did a decent amount of work on it's not new anymore, but it's the newer of the two Hunter x Hunter adaptations. This is a manga that I keep saying Shadon should read, or at least watch the anime.
Want my chimera and thoughts, don't you?
Exactly.
You want my takes on that, because that's all I ever hear people talk about.
I mean, it's tremendous. It's an excellent piece of shonen, and not just an excellent in terms of like how you'll have a shonen formula, and it's like, oh, this is a great example of kind of the tried and true formula. I feel like Hunter x Hunter is even more than that. It's really unique, I think, in the space, and I think its approach to fights it's not like perfect. I suspect that you'll have issues with some of it, but like the attempt is so cool, and I think appeals to some of the things you like about fights. But
look, I earned my honorary degree in nitpicking, and I'm damn well going to use it. I'm just saying.
You should. But yeah, Aoki here was the assistant director for episodes 27 through 89 of Hunter x Hunter. and was the the chief director, the top credited director on 11 other episodes, and did some storyboards. This person directed the OP and ED of sort of, I guess it's not a surprise hit, but like it surprised me that it hit over here, High School of the Dead. Did you ever see High School of the Dead?
Nope.
But you've heard of it, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, it's like, I think this has penetrated nerd fandom in like a broader way.
You left too long of a pause after saying I'm going to penetrate. Jesus Christ.
Apologies.
I was like, this is setting into some soundboard stuff here. Like, you're going to be like the Step By guy.
Yes. And this person also, I guess, man, I say this person's new, but like it's just a small CV, but like the stuff they've been working on, was in the early part of last decade, like the Hunter x Hunter, but also the like, do you remember, do you recall, this might have even been in the 2000s, not even in the 2010s, but when
I can't remember what happened last week, mate, so this is gonna be a stretch, but do try me.
Okay, well, this one might have stuck. Do you remember when Studio Madhouse and Marvel got together and were like, let's make a bunch of Marvel anime?
I know there was an Iron Man one. I remember that.
Yes. Okay, so there was also an X-Men one and a Blade one. And Aoki here worked on the OPs and EDs for those. Yeah, which is just like a weird thing. But they've been... and Hunter x Hunter, I think, was also a Studio Madhouse thing. So they've been doing work at Studio Madhouse for a while, but now they are involved with this studio that I'm frantically trying to look up because I can't remember who the studio is that's doing
Isn't it Studio Nut? Like, I think they're brand new, aren't they? Studio Nut. We discussed this, I'm sure.
I think we did, but I can't fucking remember. Okay, I'm gonna give it.
It's been a long year.
Decadence, Mal. I'm gonna go to the side of evil. Yes, it is. You're right. Studio Nut.
I mean, you know full well, like, the first line of their address is going to be number 69 on whatever, like, street they're on.
Yeah. They are really new. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing you were saying about that director, though, that I think is worth noting is while you said their CV was short, like, how many episodes, like, again, did you mention they did of Hunter x Hunter? I almost said Hunter x Hunter, but I didn't want to get stabbed.
Over 50 as the assistant director. Like, yeah.
Just, okay, like, you can make the argument that they're not quite as experienced in, like, varieties of different shows. But working consistently on a long-form show like that in of itself is its own kind of experience, which is worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So, it's a how should we say? It's a short CV, but there's a lot of text underneath each like paragraph, if you know what I mean.
It's
crunchy.
It's got some chunk to it. Mm-hmm. But now, okay, so that's
don't eat their CV, Doc. Please.
No. I will try to refrain from that. But now, I think it's time now we're going to do patron questions, right?
Correct, indeed. So we have a couple this week that come from Kate Rose. I'm just going to find them.
Thank you, Kate, in advance. We appreciate it.
Okay. So the first question goes something a bit like this. Which one would you have sided with? Kaburagi and destroying the system, or Turkey and maintaining the status quo? Turkey being the character and not the nation. Just want to clarify. So we need to provide we need to provide a bit of context here, and I'm going to do that while Doc tries to recover from that awful joke. So if it wasn't clear from Kate's question, Kaburagi gets what he wants in the end here. He and Natsume join up to destroy the Gadol completely by basically... Well, it's called the GG Protocol, believe it or not, which I think is an amazingly cute reference. It's GGS, so GGs, like good games.
It's Gadol genocide, I think, right?
Yeah. So it's the kill switch for all the Gadol, which is inside a factory. It's inside the only factory that produces them, basically.
Are you saying they flipped the switch to launch Gamergate? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no. Well, to be fair, I imagine some of the people who took part in Gamergate 2 both look, sound, and act like Gadol. So there you go.
Oh,
Am I wrong though?
nope, 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 nope.
Exactly. So, okay, yes, Kabaragi's goal basically is to tear down the entire system because after he comes back from prison, because he escapes prison through, another one of those machines that uploads his consciousness from his cyborg body into his avatar. He meets up again with Natsume. They have a talk, and that talk leads him to realize that this is something I'll be addressing later because I find it really fascinating. But basically, he's realized that what he's done is nowhere near enough. He has to rip down the entire thing, burn the forest down, start from scratch, and that involves, as one part of it, destroying the Gadol completely, like destroying the factory and killing every last one of them through this system. On the other hand, we have Turkey, which is the most non-intimidating name for a prisoner ever. So Turkey's plan, and this is something else I'm going to address later through these talking points. I know.
Turkey's plan.
if I called him Turk, though, people would think I was referring to the character from Scrubs, so I can't win here.
Right, right.
So Turkey, he says to Sarkozy rather, hey, you know what? Like, I've got a good thing going here in prison. I'm going to leave things as they are. I'm going to rat Kabaragi and the rest of them out to the game police, as they're called. And everyone's going to, get killed except for me. So you might want to be on the winning side, bud. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Can I just, like... I'm laughing at the names because they sound silly in my ears, but I do take the story quite seriously, and I think it's, like, intentional almost that the names are so kind of goofy to us, but the stakes are so high, and like the things that they're doing and the things that they represent are so huge, and like a lot of human suffering is on the line, and yet it's just these really silly names. Again, I think that that's an intentional choice, though, and I like it. But please continue your answer. I just wanted to say that I'm not laughing at like the show's kind of what it's trying to do. Just hearing you say Turkey a lot is funny to me.
Even more. So basically, we have change versus things staying the same. I have two answers for this because there's an answer that I can give that I would like to believe I would do, but there's also the answer that I would give that in reality would happen because I'm just a regular schmuck. And indeed, that I would probably more like Sarkozy in this respect, funnily enough, because he has his own choice of do I keep things the same or do I bring about change. So ideally, I would like to tear down such a system, but in reality, maybe I'm not brave enough to do that. Like you hear, for example, like about these people say, well, if I was there at this particular horrific event, I would have. And I'm like, bullshit, you fucking would have. Don't chat shite. You'd have been pissing yourself all over the corner. So my point is, I would very much like to be one of those people who would like do the Kabaragi, so to speak, but I would probably bowl a turkey instead.
Oh, have you ever bowled a turkey in real life?
I think I did once.
As have I.
It was a rare occasion. It was glorious.
I've maybe twice, but yeah, like not. I think I've gotten a half turkey as well, which is the 3 spares. I didn't even know it was a thing until it came up on the video board.
Nice.
So what would I? Yeah, I kind of am gonna take the same like tact as you. I would like to think that I would have been as brave and just unselfish as Kabaragi. But man, it's really hard to say it. I for sure would have. Yeah, I mean, when you're, as someone who myself has a lot of privilege and whose life comparatively is like pretty good, it's one of those things that like when we talk about change and everything a lot, but like when you're talking about change that will help not just help positively and affect not just like the worst off and the least off, but like change things for you, for me, like that's again, I'd like to think that I would still make the right choice, what I consider the right choice, but it's really hard when you're staring down the barrel of that gun, so to speak, to pick the sort of noble thing, to choose the right thing that I think we both agree is like the right thing in concept, but
yeah,
but it's tough. And Turkey, I just want to say, like, Turkey's like line, I didn't want things to change. It was good enough for me as it is like a refrain repeated throughout these 4 episodes. I'm so glad we get to talk about this block. I'm sure we'll get into this as we go, but yeah, the idea of like there's all kinds of different reasons for people to prefer the status quo to like a change, right?
It's time for me to be a pretentious literary twat, which is to say, what did John Milton write in Paradise Lost? What was Satan's famous line from that? Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's not the last thing I'll be quoting. We'll get to that later. Kate has a follow-up to that, though, which is what's the pros and cons of your choice. So let's go with the ideal choice here. Like, both of us would want to change the system.
Mm-hmm.
But the pro, is that we don't allow this thing to continue. Like, in this case of Decadence, it is literally that, the humans can't live the fullest life. They can't be free. They're literally just being fed to wood chippers for the amusement of robots. That's really all it is. It's something that can't continue. Yeah. It should never have been allowed to begin. Like when people grow up like living lives like, oh, we're going to defeat the Gadol today. It's going to be great. And oh no. And then they all die horribly. I mean, in episode 10, like, also, like, Natsume's father being murdered as well because of him getting too close to the truth. I mean, as much as I can talk in the abstracts about, like, what's wrong with the system, that also is really good from a narrative standpoint to show that there's very personal stakes here. Like, never mind, like, hey, I want to live free, and not worry about the Gadol, like, wrecking my home. The system took my father for daring to want to know the truth.
That is really good about like all the characters, even Kaburagi, and all the way down to Natsume, Donatello, everybody having like yeah, let's like stop the system and do this grand thing, but also let's fulfill my personal goals here. Like everyone, like you said, has skin in the game in a real way.
Yeah, but Tom though, this is going to probably actually make me lead into my talking point on this now, which is that between oh, holy crap! We have we have a Valerie in here. Hey, how you doing, Val?
Valerie, get your ass back on the podcast sometime. we miss you.
You would love Decadence, honestly. You would love it. You would. I mean, you are a video game developer. You'd appreciate it. But okay. Point being, the con.
The long con.
So I quoted John Milton's Paradise Lost there, one of the most famous like works of like modern English fiction, like was about, fighting back, like basically Satan's a sympathetic villain in that one. But the line is true, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. But there's also, this is something that I learned while watching, of all things, Star Trek 6. There's also something from Hamlet and the Undiscovered Country, which goes something like, better to bear those burdens that we have than go to those that we do not know. That kind of thing. And that, I think, is why Turkey has this perspective, because even though he is literally in a shit factory, that is what it is. And I love the show's audacity for making it literally that they are complete shit. There is no, like, it's not like, oh, we're working Amazon warehouse, which, don't get me wrong, that's bad, that's terrible. But no, we're literally going all in. Subtleties for losers here. It is a shit factory. Like, even though he's working there is still a hierarchy there. There's still the people with privilege, and he is one of them. So why would he want to risk giving that up? And so, but that's just on his level. On a wider level, if you tear down the system, what happens next? There is, regrettably, a certain amount of safety, only a little bit of it, and comfort in knowing how things play out. It's a scary world out there. That's why we have Faye, the character that Natsume knows, saying, I didn't want things to change. A lot of the characters, both cyborg and human, feel this reticence towards change, be it on a personal or wider level. Which again is to this show's credit. They bring
she even said, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were going to pause there, and I could sneak it in just to say Natsume even says that at one point for sure. It's an oft repeated refrain.
Yeah, and the thing about the con though is let's assume that Decadence, the actual place, is completely destroyed. I mean, they lose all the Oxyome, for example. They're all going to like live a pretty like subsistence dirt farming life forever. Like it's uncertain, you know. They may end up a little worse than where they are now. You know, what is one or two people's like blood to grease the wheels, if you want to view it that way.
Yeah.
Not a sentiment I agree with.
No, yeah, no, I hear
but,
you.
But you can totally see how people might find themselves comfortable even with what little they have, because there's no guarantee that if things change so dramatically, they'll be able to keep hold of it.
Better the devil you know, right?
Exactly. And this show is so good at exploring that. Like, I'm not even talking about like some other stuff as well, which I'll get to in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the con. So that's why Turkey is a great character, not just because, I mean, you might argue, well, that makes no sense. Like, you know, why would he want that? He's a literal shit factory. But it's to Decadence's credit that he can put a character in such a low place, such an awful position, and still make the very clear argument that even in that, there is still privilege, there is still hierarchy, and people will fight to defend it, even when it's not necessarily their best interests.
Totally. I mean, if you think about this, from like you don't even have to think about it from the point of view of like bringing down the grand structure of capitalism. You can think about it as a more like concrete real world example, Shadon. Like it's why people often stay in jobs they hate, right? That are shitty, because there's like a degree of shittiness that they feel like, okay, like I understand what's going on here. I can put up with it. I mean, granted, a lot of time, you know, people are trying to get out and they just can't. But I think there are also people that don't really enjoy their jobs that much. And they could, in theory, be doing something more with their lives, something they find more fulfilling. But like, they know they're going to get a certain amount of money. They can put up with the bullshit that they find. They feel like, you know, okay, it's worth it or whatever. And they don't make that kind of change. So like, yeah, I think people make these kind of trade-offs a lot. And so from my point of view, like it's not like a weird, like I wasn't like, Turkey, why? Like this is not understandable. This is not a motive I can wrap my arms around. Like it's super understandable. And yeah, I agree with you that he is a good character. But what are the pros and cons? I mean, I think you probably touched on most of them. I mean, the pro is that like, you would alleviate like a really heinous form of human suffering in the world. And that is a very good thing. The con is the great unknown. And that's, you know, God, like when you shake up the structure of the world, kind of that deeply, it is a good thing, but maybe not every single outcome for every single person is going to be desirable. I mean, you could even argue that like a character like Pipe, you know, Agadol, is an innocent. But because of this...
Well, Kaburagi certainly seems to think so when we get back to... Oh my god, that scene.
Yeah. And Pipe dies, but as a result of what happens, like, you know, and it's for the greater good and all that, but like, you know, it's not going to be without cost. It's not going to be cost-free. So...
Absolutely. Right. Next question from Kate goes something like this. Why do you think Natsume regretted knowing the truth about Decadence? I think part of that is something that I've already discussed about, you know, like better to bear what we know than go to what we don't. But I think a part of that also is now that she has a responsibility, like she's now part of the lie. She's now party to it, and that in of itself carries an immense weight. Like, we see that, for example, when she meets up with the rest of the humans having their celebratory party that the Cadol are gone. And it's a party they could definitely celebrate this time, because they are all gone, save for one, because... God. I want to get to that, because that's actually something I might be a little critical about, but I'll get to that later. But they otherwise, like, have every right to celebrate. But Natsume knows the truth. And she's party to the lie now. You know, it's like when you... It's like... Say, like, you know someone who's having an affair, and you know their partner as well, and you don't then tell their partner, but you're just as guilty now of not saying, in a sense. I mean, obviously, you're not the one committing the crime, But even that carries a weight on it. And then you scale that up to what we have here, which is, I know that the world that we live in was a lie that was designed essentially for the entertainment of robots. Can you imagine telling that to someone? To anyone? If she told that to Kurenai would think she was fucking nuts.
When he was telling
she sits
her,
on that as well.
I was like, my dude is just gonna like straight up tell her right here with the alarm going off and everything. He's just gonna be like, well, Natsume, you're in the Matrix and shit. And I'm like, no, you can't just bring it on her. And I'm glad that they did the whole, like, I really liked how they portrayed her reaction to it. I thought that was, like, how one would probably react to such a truth in that context. And she was in the right context to believe it. If you just walked up to someone and told them that and their life was going on like normal, they would just shrug it off. But, like, Natsume had already seen a lot of crazy shit, and she was, like, looking for an explanation. But I think I interrupted you, though, so please continue your answer.
So I think that's part of it, like, that she's now party to that lie. And on top of that, it's also completely undone everything she's worked for, both even before she became a tanker, and after she became a tanker. Because, let's make no mistake here, I'm going to address this later, Kaburagi has massively fucked up. Not in what he's done in these most recent episodes, but with his very original intent in training Natsume to begin with. I'm going to discuss that later. I think that's an error on his part. Not that I'm saying it was bad to give her more skills, of course, but his intentions were not right. Like, she's essentially been double conned, if you want to call it that, where she was conned into, like, living this life where she was told, hey, you can only be this particular person, and then she got elevated out of that in the very, classic hero's journey kind of way, only to be told, oh no, this is a lie as well. It's no wonder she feels so bitter. Like, what could she believe anymore?
Right.
At least she had something to hang on to. It's a complicated mess of things that's going through her head. And I have to say, the scene in which she discusses it with Kaburagi in the Jeep when they take a rest stop is incredible. It's so good.
Yeah.
I'll mention it now since we're on point, but, like, they do things like, first off, they're inside a ruined city here, which is a perfect, like, representation of Natsume's worldview, crumbled all around her. Like, she's not in the comfort of Decadence. She's not inside the factory anymore. Everything she knows has just been torn asunder, and it's just in ruins. So that's great. And then secondly, you've got paneling. When you look dead on at the Jeep, there is the dividing, like, frame of the windshield. So it separates both her and Kaburagi, so to show there's a division between the two of them. Kaburagi's window is completely clear because his perspective is now no longer clouded, but hers is fractured because she doesn't know what to believe anymore, and she's dealing with the stress of all of this. This is all happening one by one within seconds of each other, and it textures this scene magnificently. I live for this shit, and it really, really helps show, like, the place that the both of them are in their lives right now and what they're currently going through. It's incredible stuff.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was legitimately impressed by that. To answer the question, like, there's so many different reasons Natsume doesn't want to believe it. I think that you could pick any of them, and they alone would be good enough reason for saying no. But I reject your reality and substitute my own. You know, bring back the home joke. But all of them are good. So next up.
Oh wait,
Doc,
I have an answer on that. Well, before I answer Kate's question, I just want to return briefly to something we talked about just a second ago when we were answering the previous question from Kate. I think, gosh, as soon as the last sentence I said left my mouth, right, that, there's a high cost to doing something that is still the right thing to do for the greater good. Like, that's still something, like, I personally struggle with that. I really grapple with that kind of idea. And, I mean, I know it's not, like, thankfully, I don't have to make a lot of choices in my day-to-day life that, affect sort of the greater good versus, like, the good of a single person. But, the classic moral philosophy problem, dilemma kind of thing, like, I have a hard time with notions like the greater good, just because, like, collateral damage kind of...
Besides what the greater good is.
Yeah, well, that too, right? I mean, that's the whole other like can of worms. But like, just even if we can agree on that, like the collateral damage from it that's always going to happen is always really difficult to stomach. But I just wanted to put that out there as a like a sort of my own personal thought on this, and have it said. I'm sure I've talked about it before, but just in case someone's listening and hasn't heard. But so can you repeat this question that we're answering now about Natsume?
Why do you think Natsume regretted knowing the truth about decadence?
Ah, okay. So yeah, I mean, you said it really well. I often talk. I think I even talked last week. I know I talked last week about oftentimes in anime, video games, like Japanese fiction aimed at the sort of audience that this show is going for. You have this dichotomy between truth and happiness that is often presented, and it for some reason truth is always like opposed to happiness. Like it's always like, well, you could sort of continue being content and suck at the teat of happiness, right, with a blindfold over your eyes.
To clarify that though, I think that when people say that it's opposed, I think that that's in reference to in the immediate.
Right. Yeah. I actually have a lot to say about this as well, which I hope I hope the show picks up that line of thought that you're touching on, because I do. Yeah, I totally do, and I think it relates a lot to kind of what we find out, the truths we find out in the prison, like what the ghetto shit is and things like that. That all kind of relates to the point I want to make about all this later. But yeah, I mean, her whole frame of reference for like what is good, what makes her happy, her goals, what she's trying to achieve. I mean, it's just totally been blown up, right? Like, I don't know, like this is not really, I mean, we can't really relate to like you're in the Matrix. No one's ever going to tell us that because the material world is real. I'm just telling you that. But like, let's say, I don't know, someone's like, hey, you're adopted, right? Like if you were really tight with your family, that could like, really blow up your worldview and you might start to question all kinds of things. Or if you were like a very devout person and then suddenly you've realized one day you don't really believe in God anymore. And then like you would start to question probably a lot of other things about your life. And so she's very much in this mode of like...
If you grew up in a cult, for example.
Yeah.
I read a BBC News article a while back. It was a long read about this kid who I think it was in... I am 99% certain it was in Australia, but I could be wrong. But the point being, from date of birth, day he was born, till he was 15, he lived inside this cult. And only when it got to the point where he was 15 did the authorities finally intervene, take him away. He had never left the little farm they'd lived on, like it was completely enclosed area. He'd only ever had contact with the family members, be they literal family or otherwise. He had never met a regular person, if you want to call it that. And it was him, like, recounting that experience, like, many years later, now happily... Like, he's happily married now, like you say, he's got a good job, he's fine, he's done okay. But it was his expression of, like, how suddenly I realized there was a world out there beyond the world I'm in. And this can be devastating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally. It really... And, I think you made a great point about her feeling like a co-conspirator now. But just from, like, a personal point of view for her... she is probably just like questioning so many things, and that is it can be when you're on the other side of something like that, you can look at it and be like, boy, this was a valuable experience, like I grew a lot and I learned about myself. But when you're in that shit, that like existential crisis is really, really difficult, man. It's those are hard yards to trudge through. And so this is where I think she is, and she's mad about it. I mean, like, why did you fucking tell me? Why did you ruin it? Like, my life was, there was an order to it. I was doing things that were good. I was helping people as I saw it.
I was fighting tangible things and not something that's like more abstract.
Yeah. And that's why I think she just feels stupid. She talks about like, I wanted to change myself. Like that was my whole goal. But now everything, I mean, I just feel dumb. It just feels silly because I didn't realize that I was doing all those things in a constructed reality, almost like a puppet, like just part of some game. And, Yeah, I mean that's definitely, I could see how that could make you feel very, very small and insignificant. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, she's got a lot of reason to be angry and got a lot of legitimate anger to work through. And that is why she was like, why didn't you leave me in the dark?
That's have to wait until after the end of the show, though. The way things go in the moment,
God. These cliffhangers are brutal, dude.
they are. Speaking of which, that's our next question. Actually, on the episode 10 cliffhanger, do you think Hugin, otherwise known as Dio Cube, will kill Natsume before the uncontrolled Gadol reaches decadence? No, I don't know how yet, but I can't fathom. I just can't fathom Natsume just simply being killed off like that.
I agree. Yeah, there's no way. Nope. She ain't going anywhere.
No, how she escapes him, or if she does even escape and isn't like taken in for his amusement or whatever, I don't know. But nah, from a writing sense, like it would feel cheap, and it would actually cheapen her as a character because there's something else I need to address in a bit about how I feel about Natsume at this particular point, which I think I might as well go into now rather than dancing around the issue. But so when we did our first set of episodes about decadence, I put on my pretentious anime wanker beret and started talking about like when you live in a society, can you write something? And we discussed that. Mm-hmm. But I have kind of a meta thing to talk about here as well, which is that a lot of these episodes like show that what Natsume is doing is ultimately futile. So the question I have to ask you therefore is she an active protagonist in the story, or is it really the story of Kaburagi?
That's an interesting question.
Does Natsume only exist as a character from the story's perspective to serve his story?
I think we probably won't know until the end, right?
Yeah. Well, this leads into an answer. That'll be something I'm going to reference a bit when I get to an answer for another question that Kate has. But the point I'm making here is that I understand that like Decadence is gunning for this idea that the humans had this worldview of we fight the Gadol and eventually we'll kill them and we'll go back to normal, and it was all a lie. But the thing is, Natsume has never, until now, known the truth. So she's had no means of actually affecting the outcome of the story. And it therefore feels to me like her presence in the show is more there to benefit Kaburagi as a character, because that's the thing that enters his life. That's the person in his life that changes him. He says as much. But she herself is like, while she's gone through like personal trial and such, I don't feel like it's framed strictly about her, overcoming challenges, because the challenges she faces are still in the confines of that lie that she's been told. And therefore, like, she can fight now, certainly. And maybe that will be the thing she does. Maybe she fights Hugin herself and beats him, fight. Like, but part of me wonders, like, if that's a problem with the show, that it can't ultimately escape the structure it's set for how Natsume works in the show, and therefore actually give her own agency rather than her just existing for Kaburagi's sake as a character. Now, I should say, though, characters existing for the sake of other characters when you're writing a story is not necessarily a bad thing. Not every character has equal weight or equal agency in a story, or even equal contribution. I mean, we've talked, for example, about Hero's Journey. How many times do you see mentor characters die, for example, in the first acts to spur the protagonist to action? And I'm saying that as a neutral value thing. That's not necessarily bad. It depends on how you use it. But that could be the case here with Natsume, and I'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, so what I will say is I think that might be, that might be a little strong, just because I think that her, like, a character who learns that they've been living a lie, Shadon, and then gets the truth and has to overcome that mental and emotional challenge. To me, that's like that keeps her at the center of the show, like keeps her as the centerpiece of the show, because that's all of us too. I mean, we're just humans, right? Like we're meant to kind of be and sympathize with the character who has been hoodwinked. Like Kaburagi, for as involved as he is in the story and as important as he is, like, not only is like Natsume the catalyst for everything he does, but like I don't know, he just doesn't feel as central because he doesn't have that same struggle. Like he doesn't have the same like his arc of inner growth seems to be over, whereas Natsume still has a lot of emotional challenges to overcome with accepting the fallout of everything. And I think Kaburagi is going to be the person who is sort of doing a lot of things. He knows what to do, but Natsume has been, and I think will continue to be going forward, the why, like, and show people why it's important that we be free, right?
Yeah. Well, I suppose the thing I would say in response to that is we obviously brought up the Matrix before, which is your, like, text of person realizing the world is not real. But how odd would it be if the Matrix A was actually about Morpheus and B also that the revelation took place in the third act?
It will be a different story, right? It will be
that's why I feel a bit shaky about like this whole thing of Natsume truly being an independent character who has her own agency and is in the plot for her own sake rather than for Kaburagi's. If this had happened much sooner and she had full knowledge, I'd feel a bit more fair about it.
Well, do you think you need knowledge to have agency? I mean,
yes. Because she otherwise wouldn't. Because if she hadn't been told about what was going on by Kaburagi, she'd never be able to do it.
Okay, well, let's abstract it from the story, right? And be like, as a character or as a human, do you think you need like what degree of knowledge? Like, when do you cross the threshold of having enough knowledge to be considered a free agent?
To the point in which you can effect an actual change with your actions that's permanent and substantial.
Well, but she was doing that with other people. I think she had an effect on Kurenai. She had an effect on Kaburagi.
Yes.
Yeah,
But did we discuss this about the cyclic nature of things and how she essentially was becoming the new Kurenai? Over a long enough time scale, without knowing the truth of it, she'd have fought the Gadol, died because of them, or died because of old age, and things would have continued, and nothing would have fundamentally changed.
She's the reason that the hole in the wall is getting patched up.
Yeah,
that's all her.
But the actual guy running Decadence says it doesn't matter that they're patching it up. He himself makes that clear.
But just because there's a reaction to what you do doesn't mean that what you did wasn't a free action. Like you getting up off the floor after I punched you, it doesn't mean what you did wasn't free if I punch you down again. She affected like a huge change and did something that was like no one anticipated. Like that was all her, and she's changing hearts and minds.
I still think the story has I think the story is trying to make the opposite point that because you're right, she does go through hell to try and make this happen, but it's inconsequential in the longer term. But I'm going to come back to that later because that's going to involve me talking about the idea of narratives.
I don't agree with it. See, this is the whole argument of like Subaru didn't do anything because he kept repeating, but like you can look at him as a person and see that what he did in the time loops, even though he got looped back to the start, mattered because it affected him so deeply and it was real. And Natsume has been affecting herself more than anyone. She's changed her own self, even though it has been under like false pretenses. It's like she did this whole solution to her kind of the first step forward she makes is telling Kaburagi, I may not have known the whole truth about the world, but the time we spent together was not a lie. That was real. And
I'm not doubting her internal growth. I'm strictly speaking about the wider world. I mean, it's all well and good for her to go through a personal story like that where she does change, and she has, and that's great. That's all good. That's good in the show. But make no mistake, like the show, I think is pretty clear in a number of ways how making changes like fixing the wall up, or indeed Kaburagi's own involvement with Natsume as intended at the start, is not enough. And I'm going to have to save that point for legs. I need to go into that in more detail.
Well, it's a first step, right? I think Kaburagi is pretty, like, clear that, like, this is not... I was a little bit fuzzy on. I was like, oh man, like, you know, episode 10, like, is this like this seems pretty despondent, I mean, what did they do all this for? And they feel pretty down, but like, Kabaragi's very much like, this is step one of the plan that I need to carry out. And it's good that there was that time of despondency. I mean, it makes everything feel more real and grounded because systems take like a lot of time. Like, I mean, if it were so easy that one calculated strike could bring it down, I mean, I don't know. It's like a real kind of thick thing,
That's another thing I have to say for a separate talking point because they're all kind of interlinked. But anyway, I'll get to those later. But in general, like, to answer that point, no, I don't think Hugin will kill Natsume. Next question. No. Is there any hope that the system can be defeated? And what do you think of the aftermath of that would look like? Well, I have a crazy theory. And I actually would be curious if the show addressed this. So, question for you, Doc. Let's map this out, you and I, together.
Okay. I have a pen.
Over this. Where do you get Oxion from?
Oh, I can't remember. From the Gadol, right?
Yeah, you get it from the Gadol. You get it from the Gadol, okay? Mm-hmm. And can the cyborg survive without Oxion?
It would seem to be not the case, right? It would seem that they can survive, but eventually they will die if they don't have more. So weren't we seeing like early on, like Kabaragi's readout? It would be like, you haven't had.
He was trying to commit. He was trying to commit suicide basically through hunger strike.
Like 75 years or something like that. So apparently they can last it seems like they can last a while on a Philip, but like if they have quality stuff, but yeah, there are finite beings, yes.
Yeah. So put those facts in your mind together with the fact that all the Gadol are dead, save for the one, and I'm going to get to that later. But consider it from Kabaragi's perspective that he wanted to destroy all of the Gadol, period, forever. Would that not also mean the end of his race?
Probably, yes. It would seem.
Holy shit!
It sure would seem that way.
That's a fucking thing. That's a huge thing. I don't know ultimately what will happen at the end of the show right now. I have a feeling we're going to get maybe a X amount of years later kind of thing. But by all accounts, like if they do end up killing off this final Gadol, and then that's the end of it.
Excuse me, Gadolzilla. You should address it
yes,
properly.
Sin Gadol, like I made the Sin reference before. Like it's any kaiju you want it to be, basically. But yeah, it would seem that Kabaragi, like at least if he wasn't aware of those like consequences, then yeah, he's going to result in the end of his race, and that's going to be it. So that's going to mean the end of the cyborg race. It'll result in him dying eventually. Whether or not that happens before like Natsume because of old age, as you said, like how long he'd be going for. I'm inclined to believe it's not as long term as you might have said, because I think that would be, if that's what they're going for, that would diminish the impacts of it.
I believe that's what the readout said in an early episode.
I think it was more that that was just how long he'd been in operation for, not that he had like been that long without Oxion.
Yeah. I could have misread that, but someone in the chat may know. But sorry, did you have more to say?
Yes.
Okay. Hit me with your crazy theory.
Like, yeah. So that's my crazy theory, Blake. But maybe there could be some way, as Gogo Type Robot suggests, maybe they could synthesize it somehow. That it hasn't been brought up yet, I find a bit odd, because I think that I'm not saying that they have to go with this, but I just think that it seems like such a natural progression from everything that's been discussed, and in itself is something worth exploring. That I would like them to do that, but we're only 2 episodes left, so I think that might unfortunately have to get missed. But I will say the fact that I was thinking of this like made me really excited, just because it had me engaged with this show on that kind of level. And it's not often I feel that for a lot of anime where I'm like, holy shit, these are the consequences. I start theory crafting, and I like that a lot.
That's cool.
Can the system be defeated? Yeah, I'm going to say so. What I would be most curious about is that very aftermath, and that's why I'm going to make a suggestion that ties in with Kate's next question, which is what's the ideal ending? I would very dearly love a season 2 of Decadence, which is just about the reconstruction.
Totally. Sign me up for that.
That I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have much action because there'd be no Gaddle left. But you could do so. You could figure out something.
There'd be a civil war of some kind, right?
Yeah, cyborgs fight humans, that kind of thing. But you can then deal with the characters having to live in this new world and adapt to their new roles. I mean, if you're Kurenai, for example, and you've spent your entire life fighting, and you're suddenly so, okay, Kurenai, this is a shovel, and these are potatoes. Get digging. That kind of thing. Because we need to start farming. Like, how do you cope with that change? Like, it's like that's something that's worth exploring. So I mean, like, I don't know. I think that they are going to win. I think that Decadence itself will get one final punch off against the new Gaddle. Although maybe it will actually end up failing. That would be something.
It would be.
And that would actually be quite symbolic that the thing that they created has grown so out of control it can no longer be stopped. Which is, again, I'm dancing around the issue of why I don't like the new Gaddle thing that's happening here. But I think that's something you can argue in favor of if you want to use it as a symbolic gesture of this is a thing that we created that's grown out of control. Right. But I'll get to that later.
So I think the system will be defeated. It would be a deeply cynical anime if it ended and the system remained. Yeah, right. If you just linked the fire and continued Gwen's Age of Fire anew, that will be bad. So I think it will come down, be brought down. If I had to say something wild, I guess, like, maybe the new Gaddle, maybe it'll be something like this, like, they will sort of defeat the new Gaddle without exploding it in such a way that, like, they can harvest a shit ton of Oxyone from it, and while they do that, it'll very much be like, well, this is enough to tide us over. But in the meantime, we'll be thinking about a way to make more, or we'll be exploring space for a different supply of it or something like that.
Decadence in space. It's two fists now. Let's go.
Well, whatever.
I would be okay with that.
Well, whatever the Yamato is, they have to take it over up there above the Decadence and use that as some kind of exploratory, like, go on an expedition looking for Oxyone.
Shit, I completely forgot about that, but you're right. That's something else they'll need to deal with as well.
Yeah, because that
in itself could be a season 2.
All the bougie cyborgs are still up there, and they're just like, oh man, there's a glitch in the game. This is no fun.
Oh man, I'll play Fall Guys instead.
Did anybody tweet Decadence? Get in the Discord. Get the devs on the line.
Submit a trouble ticket.
But I loved, like, I thought episode 9 was going to be something they did at the end. But I loved, like, the fact that episode 10 exists as it turns out not to be, I thought it was going to be 3 full episodes of epilogue, but it turns out, again, the system is quite more complicated and deeply embedded and resilient and all that sort of shit.
I have a thing to say about that, so we'll get to that soon enough. But yeah, I really want there to be a second season that explores the consequences or even the cleanup from it. I mean, that ship, for example, like, if you wanted to make a season that was strictly about like, we need to build a ship to go up to this other ship so we can invade it, and all the effort that goes into that, that's going to be great. I mean, hell, they fought in anti-gravity, so them going into space would actually make a lot of sense, scarily enough. Like, there's so many different ways you can take this. I'm deeply intrigued by it. It's like, we're not starting it, like, the apocalypse has happened in Decadence, but we're not dealing with, like, the reconstruction immediately. We're seeing, like, the fall of one, like, way of living in favor of another, and that would be great. I would be all over. Basically, I'm excited whatever happens. I want Hugin to get flicked by the Decadence hand.
Yes.
Ping.
Yes.
I would be entirely okay with that.
That must happen. Hugin must meet a horrible end, I feel like.
Ding.
Yes.
Great.
But regime change is hard, man. It
boy.
sounds like I'm reading a lot about the French Revolution for fun. And
you're not trying to be pointing that in practice, are you?
No.
I mean, you've got more reason than ever right now, but that's getting a bit too real, perhaps, for this discussion.
But if only like one swift strike could change things and we all live happily ever after. But I know the story will wrap up more cleanly than the European 18th and 19th century history. But yeah, I'm glad at least that there is a little bit of acknowledgement here. That's like it's not like just plant a bomb, boom, and then you change the world. That's very good. But yeah, are there more questions?
No, I believe that is it from our patrons this week.
Thank
do you
you,
have anything else
Kate.
you want about Kane's Point?
No, just thanks for sending in the questions as always, Kate. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you. Right then, so let's get to talking points. I'm going to start with a small one here. Decadence, I want to ask you, like, do you think it's pro or anti-video game?
I think it's just using it as a metaphor.
I think to drape the stuff over.
Yeah, I don't think it's meant to like be kind of saying things about MMOs or whatever. I think it's just like what does our audience understand? Like what are people really into that watch anime, and how can we use that to like make these concepts we want to talk about easier to digest?
Well, here's a great thing though, right? I think this is in episode 6. I'm going to have to lay my cards on the table here. I haven't yet had the chance to rewatch all these episodes, folks, but I've got most of it crystallized in my head because I was just like that in transpire.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was episode 6, which opens when Kaburagi like finally gets his new... Sorry, 7, I mean to say. When Kaburagi gets his new avatar that he's using temporarily, and he has to go through the introductory experience of the going Decadence, which... I thought this was amazing satire because what happens is you have this incredibly long, like, welcome to Decadence. It is the world of violence in the post-apocalypse. And you, the special, are the only one who can bring order to a desolate wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. Like, big booming introduction and immediately hard cut to terms and conditions.
Yes.
Which is just incredible because it's so true. Like, it's true of the like when I played World of Warcraft, like I installed like an expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, got the amazing opening cinematic, started up, and it was like, okay, please agree to these terms and conditions. And I'm like, oh god, it dispels the myth, and I think it was really funny of them to do that, but it also funny enough ties into Kaburagi like realizing what he's been doing has been a lie, so that works as well. But I think that generally speaking, I do agree with you that apart from that moment of satire, which I think works and isn't too mean, it isn't too like, hateful towards the cyborgs. Like we said, they're as much a victim, which stands in stark contrast to our favorite show, Frank's, where it basically in the end said that all the kids were lazy, like pampered shits who need to go out and start like tilling soil and shit like that. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It doesn't do that for like. It's much more sympathetic towards the people inside the system. But no, I am of the opinion that it is, as you say, a framework from which to hang this story and the concepts and the things it chooses to explore. Yeah,
and also it's just really on point with how it uses the drape. In so many different ways. Like I feel like again the whole silly name thing and the bombast and the gaminess of something that is, like you said, essentially a large kind of wood chipper for human lives. I mean, it's the way that like capitalism. I mean, is it really any different? Like when you boil it down to the essentials. Right? Like it's so exploitative, and the people at the top percentage of the kind of wealth inequality, the super best off, the things that they do that do cause suffering to people, like probably seem as abstract from reality as you agreeing to terms and conditions in a game, and it probably seems like gamey. Or, I mean, just regular people, like, continuing to shop on Amazon or something like that, when that, like, hurts people. You know what I mean?
You know what? I'm going to announce eminent domain over this person's property. And all I'm doing is filling in a form.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
If you don't know what eminent domain is, by the way, folks, that is the forced seizure of land by the government.
Yeah.
So,
like,
yeah, that kind of thing. But you would
so
obviously
much.
just like if you were on the side of which you were doing that, it would just be an exercise in paperwork for you.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, it's why I love this motif. There's just a lot that you can, I feel like, take from it. But I am in agreement that it's not. Oh, go ahead.
Speaking of video games, I think I read an interview or a discussion of this show somewhere where the creators basically admitted that they were inspired by Wreck-It Ralph.
Yes, right. I heard that too. Interesting.
Yeah. But what also struck me is there's the episode in which Kaburagi and the prisoners have to try and recover his original body. And it's stored inside this like container that's in this massive like sorting facility. And that was giving me massive Half-Life 2 vibes because there's a level that at the very end of the game, the Citadel, that works a lot similarly, where you've got people being shipped around in like these containers on rails. It's crazy. I just thought like that seems.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you'd have like all the other influences like. But yeah, Wreck-It Ralph was not a thing I expected, but it works. Believe me, it absolutely does work. All right, I'm done on that point, so I'm going to pass it to you, Don.
Well, I alluded to this earlier, so why not jump straight in head first? The truth versus happiness dichotomy presented to Natsume that she fully kind of starts to explore in episodes 9 and 10. And I was asking myself why I was watching this. Why it's always presented, or it seems like it's always presented in this kind of fiction as like the truth, like the ultimate truth that's been hidden from the characters is always diametrically opposed to happiness. Why is it not like, oh, you've learned the truth and like it will make you happier, right? And I was thinking about this, and I think like, again, I think this fits really, really well with what they're trying to do. Is that like happiness as these people have defined it is so contingent on the definitions that they've been given by the system that's been oppressing them. I mean, it's like when the cyborgs find out that they've been eating shit the entire time, or like when the characters in Snowpiercer find out that the rations they've been given, that they desperately fight over and everything like that, are just mashed up cockroaches. Like that's a really kind of really simple way to put something complicated, I think, which is like, again, the terms of your happiness, what you define as good, the mechanism by which you kind of figure out and set your goals. Like, I think that whole thing is what's being upturned by like, okay, this is the truth. You're going to learn it, and it is going to totally flip all that stuff on its head. You have to get rid of that you know. Happiness as you understand it is going to change, but the brilliant thing is that it's not just going to be hard. You're not just going to be unhappy. Now that you can live authentically, you get to redefine happiness for yourself. It is not going to be shit that's fed to you. It is going to be, again, how you choose to live. And this is very much Natsume's natural instinct anyway, and so that's why I think she's going to fight through this and she's going to be okay.
Well, the thing is, like, to follow from what you said there, now that the truth is out there and she knows everything and knows what happened to her father, you could argue that whatever she's going to do next, it's going to be the first time she's truly done it for herself, completely free of, like, the lies and such that have been sold over her. Like, if she kills Hugin next, for example, that's going to be like the first fight that she'll have ever undertaken as a tanker that she did entirely for her own reasons, without any anything clouding her.
Yeah, I mean, she'll be on the same playing field as in terms of her epistemic sort of field of view, right? Like her knowledge will be the same kind of be on equal footing of Kaburagi. I couldn't think of his name. So if that is your like criteria of like acting as a free agent, yeah, she's gonna get to, I think, now. And all this just reminds me of a really great David Foster Wallace quote that I love from Infinite Jest, which is like, the truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you.
That's what I said before. Like, it's in the immediate. I think that's when you said like people see these as irreconcilable. That's not true, but it's not something you'll definitely be incredibly unhappy in the moment. Like, I mean, again, like say, you find out that your partner's having an affair. Like, that's not going to make you happy right there and then, is it? It's gonna
no.
You're gonna be devastated. You're gonna think that you'll never find someone again, all that kind of stuff. But time will sort that. Time will make it better. But you would never, of course, been granted the opportunity if otherwise you hadn't learned the truth. So, yeah. But I do agree with you. I think that Natsume's dilemma now is, I mean, this show has shown how hard it's been for Kaburagi to tell her the truth to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But how exponentially more difficult is it to tell an entire society of that? I could totally, for example, regrettably believe that if all the humans found out simultaneously the same thing that Natsume did, some of them wouldn't believe it. They flat out think it was a lie. They'd think it wasn't the truth because, well, look at what happens in real life.
I know, which is like why I'm so intrigued about Kaburagi not wanting to tell them. Like, this is my question. I had a question for you about this. So, I mean, yeah, his whole thing, like, no, you can't tell anybody because if you know, then you'll be a bug. And at first, again, I was like, what? Like, you guys blew the thing up already. You don't have to worry about that shit anymore. But like, just because the Gadol factory is gone now, I mean, it's not the final victory. There's still a lot that needs to be done and a lot that could happen in the future that could jeopardize them.
Well, there's a specific line, I think, from either Jill or Kaburagi that says that they can rebuild the factory within a couple of years.
Yeah.
Now that brings me, funnily enough, actually back to Final Fantasy X when I mentioned Sin before as a joke. Like, where, hey, you know what? Like, we only get to get rid of Sin for a couple of years, then it comes back. But is it not great that we get rid of it? I mean, the story actually has a lot more similarities now. I kind of think of it that way.
Yeah, Yuki brings up AOT as I'm actually not familiar with how that big reveal goes because it's a manga that, I mean, I know that you have a strong distaste for the show. I feel like I ought to read it at some point.
No. I need to clarify. I don't have a strong distaste for the show. I have a completely strong indifference to the show because to me, like, it's like I said in the past. Like, it's like having a firework display on a day that doesn't have any meaning to it. Looks nice, don't care. It's not like you're celebrating someone's birthday.
Totally right. And my go-to example of this is the one that sticks in my head is always Persona 3.
Oh man.
When they are
the closing like weeks or days, like,
you really do get to choose. Like, you can, like, because Ryuji, Death, has revealed to you, like, oh hey, Nyx is coming, he's going to destroy the world, it's really going to go. Now that I've told you, you can fight me and like deal with this like really depressing truth, or you can just forget and spend your last days in peace loving your family. That's really like truth or happiness. They might as well like put the text up on the screen. Choose. Press T or H to choose.
Trolley problem.
No. Yeah, and then of course the same kind of deal happens where like they feel like they can only like find happiness for themselves by kind of grappling with the truth and being authentic in a world that is like, the actual real world as they understand it at that point. And Grizzly brings up an interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you carry on. You mentioned you carry on Grizzly's point there.
Yeah, he says Decadence is only a theme park.
Right.
Yeah, we don't really have a good sense of like the scope of Hugin in the system. Are there more things like this, or is this sort of colony here a whole society? Is this the society, and they've just kind of gamified it completely so that the ruling Hugin class of cyborg kind of does his thing and I don't know, like what's your take on this?
Well, I think the fact that it's only a theme park, as Grizzly says, like only again serves to underscore how awful it all is. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like decadence exists because there is a legitimate need for it to say stop. I don't know, a climate catastrophe or something like that, or I don't know, to keep up a planetary shield to stop the aliens from coming or some bollocks like. No, it literally is just a theme park. It's just there to entertain people, and that's why they say that you've got people being fed into the wood chipper.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I was going to bring up though, and I hope this doesn't become true, I could kind of see a cop out ending to this show where that big gadol, when it is slain, splits into many smaller ones and the cycle begins again. But the actual system of decadence is gone. So the humans continue to fight the gadol, but the main system is gone. I wouldn't be happy with that, to be quite honest, because they would still be living the lie. I mean, unless it
Mm.
wants to make an incredibly compelling argument for that to continue in its own twisted form.
Right.
But I wouldn't. I don't know. Like, I feel like I want to see the whole thing collapse on itself, and like,
Yeah.
I generally don't feel quite okay with the fact that this Gadol has appeared at all.
Yeah, I never.
Um,
I don't like it when that kind of thing happens either. I just want to like.
well, I mean, if you want to boil down to pure nitpicks here, like, it makes no sense. Like, all the Gadol are dead. So you mean to tell me injected this guy with Gadol cells, and then suddenly we went full Prometheus or Alien on us? Like, it clearly should have got rid of that small bit of cells that got injected as well. But okay, look, whatever. I'm not going to argue the pedantic nitpick shit when I've got bigger
You're right,
thematic
though.
problems with
That's
it.
true.
When,
I feel like that's true.
when
But
I've got
anyway.
bigger thematic problems with it, which is that like I said, you can make the argument that the reason that Gadol exists in a story perspective is because it goes to show that ultimately, decadence, the system, could not contain that which it created.
Hmm.
You can make that
A
argument.
Jurassic Park argument. Life will find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the Sephiroth argument from Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because ultimately in that game, Shinra are the root cause of Sephiroth going the way he did,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually became so much control and nearly blew the fucking world up. So you can make that argument. I get it. But the thing is, like, everything that's happened in Decadence, like, so far, and what they've been fighting against has been deliberately engineered by a specific force, like, be it the company, which I think is called Solid Quake,
Oh yeah.
or
Yeah.
Hugin. Like, there are actual, like, people with intent doing this. But this
Mm-hmm.
thing with this Gadol randomly, like, infecting this dude and, like, causing it suddenly and also inexplicably grow massive over the course of, like, a day, which seems a bit of a, like, bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
That to me doesn't gel with that. It's a completely random and uncontrollable event, and I think that kind of undoes the whole fighting against a narrative or a system thing a little bit, because it doesn't work with that. You can't fight it's a random event. It's a natural disaster. This is like saying that you can blame, I don't, well, I mean, I know people probably have blamed like the Democrats in the US for like tornadoes and shit, but I mean, oh, all right, I'm going to undo that metaphor because people have said like about climate. But you get my point. Like, when it's an
Yeah.
uncontrollable, unforeseeable event, you can't like proactively fight against it and try to stop it. It's like trying to, you get my point basically.
Yeah.
That's why I
Yeah.
don't like,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't like this. I
Oh
feel like it
man.
exists partly because they want to have a big action finale. We've got to have the piston punch one more time.
Well, you do. That's true. I respect
Yeah,
the need to have that happen.
although I'm putting money on it that this piston punch is going to fail and it's going to result in like the whole thing getting wrecked.
Oh no.
Which again would fit the symbology of it's out of our control and there's like surpassed us.
Yeah. So boy, I don't really know how to feel about this exactly because I mean, on the one hand, I really agree with you. Actually, I mean, I think that this late in the show, when you have gone so deep on this theme, why shift the focus away from it? Like, why not continue to explore the rich vein that you have, and that you clearly have demonstrated that you like have a deft hand in, kind of showing the different aspects of the problems, of these sort of capitalistic systems and inequalities of and exploitation and all that stuff. So yeah, like why shift the focus? I guess maybe so they want to make this point, right? That like it's like you were saying, like it's not just that these kind of systems are flawed, not just because they're like morally kind of wrong, but like because there's like some kind of design flaw built in, like you said, that they're not always able to handle what they output. But I sort of hate that. Like I wish it would just be like, the system is closed and it runs perfectly, but the reason it needs to come down like has nothing to do with like its sort of design flaws. It's because it's fucking wrong because it is exploitative. Like that's what I would want to see. So yeah, I think ultimately I'm with you that I don't really like get why they're doing this in episode 10.
I mean, to boil this down, we learn pretty early on that the Gadol are not the true enemy. They are, they're the monsters of the week kind of thing, So why is the show choosing to end with this big Gadol that's not even like under Hugin's control of it? Like, if it turned out that was like, the secret one that they had, and Hugin was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna kill all of them just out of spite," I would have been more on board with that. Mm-hmm. But no, this is just literally, it just is there because of reasons.
Well, it's because like I think it really is like you said, they want a climactic battle to where everyone. Well, it's like they worked backwards from that, where they're like, okay, what we need is to have this big battle, and we need to have Natsume play a key part, whether an individual act or her spurring on a group to do something. Let's work backwards and try to kind of construct a reason for this to happen. But they don't really, the connection that they made, it really doesn't work. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I am also unsatisfied with it.
We'll have to see. Again, we're going to have to hold on till the final episodes. Maybe they can do something decent with it. But I'm a bit confused by its inclusion, especially the nature in which it comes about, because it's just so random. But we'll see. I mean, that's like the biggest criticism I've had of this show so far, to be quite honest. And even then, it's nowhere near close to a deal breaker. But it is contingent on this, I'm going to say, that which will make me think, is this better or not than Aizoken as far as 2020 anime goes? A lot's riding on this. Like, it still needs to stick the landing, and it isn't quite there yet.
Do you think, this is getting off track a little bit, but how far down your anime of the year list could it slide? Do you think it's like a nailed on second place minimum? Or do you think it could...
No, anything can happen. I mean, you know what? Like, you tweeted out about like show that disappointed you, and you mentioned Phantom Requiem for the Phantom.
I did.
My response to that was Cardo.
That's interesting. Well, yeah, the ending of Cardo, it didn't feel more disappointing than the second and third acts of Cardo to me.
No, well, no, it already drops off a cliff, but then that was the point in which the car exploded.
Finally hit the
bottom. Yeah, exactly. But I bring that up because, like, I suppose I should relate my experience of Cardo again for people who don't know about it. Like, when that show was airing, every single Friday when it came on, I had finished work, I would be legitimately excited for it. I wasn't watching it for the pod or anything like that, which of course doesn't mean I can't get excited for shows for the pod. We're doing Decadence after all, but you get my point. Like, it was something that I was watching purely for my own pleasure, and every single Friday I'd be like, I'm having a takeout, I'm having a beer, I'm watching this show, and I was lapping it up. I was in heaven watching the first few episodes of that, because it was legitimately great macro level sci-fi, by which I mean we're talking about wider society changes and not just how it changes a character, which is still a great way to do sci-fi, don't get me wrong. And then, like, pretty much after the second half, it just all went completely...
Yeah.
Holy humanity.
And
that's why it felt disappointing to me, not necessarily because it had dropped so far, but because it had started so high, if you follow my meaning.
Yeah. I'm
and that's why I'm feeling about Decadence, or worried about with Decadence rather, because it is so astronomically high that if it fucks up these last two episodes, I'm going to be more disappointed than if it had just been kind of there.
Oh, totally. I agree. I'm posting the link to Kato in the chat. That's why I was somewhat distracted.
Yeah, go listen to me talk about the weaponized Star Child.
Whew, that was boy. If the question was what anime like passed the 3 episode test with flying colors and then and then disappointing. Like, it will be, because the first 4 episodes of that show, I was like, oh my God, this show is an absolute banger. And then
they were phenomenal.
Oh, it just died a death.
In my head canon, Cardo is just an ONA or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, agreed. All right, what's your next talking point, buddy?
Oh boy, I still have a few.
Okay.
I actually realized that we are on the clock here, folks, unfortunately. We have about another 30 minutes or so of talking, don't we, Doc? So
yeah, I have to be somewhere a little over an hour from now. So, but I don't have to actually leave my desk to. It's a meeting, so I don't have to. But yeah, we have about an hour. So
the next thing I want to bring up, this is a smaller talking point. Decadence itself as a system and as a place is actually, believe it or not, a metaphor for the human body. This is going to sound mad, but bear with me. You have the brain, which is where what's his name resides, Minato. That's where all the things happen. You have the inner structure where the cyborgs live, and then you have the stomach or the digestive area where the humans are. Why else is it like an open chamber filled with green liquid? And then you have where all the shit comes out. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but literally the entire system is set up like an actual body, which is itself could be a reference to things like body politic, where things serve different functions. But it also goes to show that, hey, destroying the lower sections of it isn't enough. They have to get rid of the brain.
Right. Exactly.
So just a small point there, but I was like, ooh, that's cool. I like that.
Decadence is actually Osmosis Jones. I agree.
It really is. Oh God. Oh God.
Thank you, Grizzly.
I can't wait for that to become the next big talking point once everyone stopped watching all the Disney films in lockdown. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel then when you're onto that.
Oh my God.
Although then again, I think watching Osmosis Jones in current times would probably be the most poor taste film you could do. I can fight a virus with cold medicine.
Oh my God.
Bullshit then, it's bullshit now.
I haven't seen the movie, but if that's the deal, then fuck that. God.
No, it really is.
Oh,
and I'm talking the La Muerte Rojo, the Red Death.
No. Oh, I tried to read a book about a pandemic a few months ago. I just couldn't do it.
No.
Yeah. Well, and I'll in turn make a small talking point. I'll just talk about a scene that I really liked from episode 10, when I believe it's when Natsume is kind of overlooking the humans who are drinking and kind of having a party, and she sees a guy. The camera focuses on a man who makes a toast that says to freedom and peace, and everyone's like, freedom and peace, because they that's what they believe they have achieved, and then you have Natsume kind of higher up than everyone looking down on them, thinking, and it's really kind of I don't know, it's a kind of a simple scene, but it really hit me, right, that God, these poor people, they just don't realize the degree to which their life has been controlled and manipulated. And I feel so bad because they just believe that they have won this great victory. And yet, it's that they're only seeing things in 2 dimensions. I don't even know that doesn't even work as a metaphor, but their point of view is so limited, relative to the actual world and things that are really going on. And Natsume is just so sad, and Kurenai offers her comforts, but man, that was just such. It just made me think. It really did make me stop and think. Man, I wonder if other people, in real people, right, sit down and ever think about to what degree our own lives are subject to the control of, big data companies and advertising and work and all these different forces that are right in our face and also subliminal and hereditary and genetic. And it's why it just really made me I want to tip my hat to the scene because it got me to pause the show and think about things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'll just point out something you said, like where you said like that they had got a great victory. They, let's be fair, they did, but put in context, it's still not good enough.
Yeah.
And this is a wonderful segue to my final talking point. The big thing that I think Decadence is going for, and why I was insisting that Natsume like getting the wall fixed was as good as it was to see her do that, ultimately futile. So let's talk briefly about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do that.
So just before I begin, spoilers ahead for Seven Remake. Some like massive world-shattering spoilers. Just pretend like I'm talking about baking or something. I don't know. Doc, you've played Seven Remake, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And you played its completion.
Oh yes, I have beaten it. Yes.
Okay, right. People in the audience, this is your final warning for big fuck off Final Fantasy VII spoilers going live and loud in 3, 2, 1. So let's talk about narratives. So in Final Fantasy VII Remake, there are two themes of narratives, or rather, there's a theme of narratives being explored. And it is on two levels. One of which is Shinra manipulating Avalanche to basically look like they're the ones they're causing all the chaos, hurting people, making people hate them. That for all that they're struggling against Shinra, they can't ultimately defeat them because Shinra is in complete control of the narrative. Do you agree?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where they're trying to like build up a war against Wutai, which please expand on that in the remake. Thank you very much.
I know.
The next part.
Yeah.
So there's that, but then you have the wider thing where you're literally fighting the embodiment of fate as the second to last boss,
right?
And with that then destroyed, that then obviously opens up the idea that what we're going to see next in the subsequent events of Final Fantasy VII Remake will not necessarily be exactly the same as they were in the original. It opens up questions like, dare I say, is Aerith going to live?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
It's insane when you put it like that.
I almost saw like the sort of crystallized like boss versions of your party as like the fans. You know what I mean? Like who are the purists. You're fighting against the people that want the story to play out exactly the same way, or maybe even the original writers. It could be either way.
Incredible. I love that. I love that so much. So yeah, I got to the end of that game and it blew my fucking mind because I was like, holy shit, we really are like off the edge of the map here. Anything's possible. But I will say as an aside that I don't want them to simply use it for shallow like fan speculation. I want it to be substantive. I want it to have meaning. Like if you did something, for example, where Aerith lives and then like everything that happens afterwards, like she comments, I've never been here before. And I was like, well, of course you haven't. And then she's like, I don't know. It's not quite like that. You get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
What the hell does this have to do with Decadence? My point is this, right? Kabaragi's original plan was essentially to see really what would happen if he trained Natsume to be a tanker because she was a bug. Let's see how a bug lives in this world. That was his plan. I think that plan was deeply selfish of him and deeply flawed because it ultimately only perpetuates the existing narrative that Decadence the world has, which is you're going to fight the Gadol as a tanker, as a human, and maybe you'll bring about peace. But in reality, we know how it all works out. That's why I said about the idea of it being cyclic, where she would become the next Kurenai. But that wouldn't really change anything, would it? And so ultimately, Kaburagi realizes in the end that if he's going to fix anything, he has to destroy the entire system, the entire narrative. He can't play inside of it. As he's been doing. He can't fuck around. Like, this is why there's that amazing scene between him and Natsume when he's in his alternate avatar, where she says to him, I guess I just have to keep working harder now. Like, he has inadvertently indoctrinated her into this system and made her want to fight for it all the more. It's damning what he's done, in a way. Like, I don't begrudge him, like, teaching her how to fight. It's just that he's not taught her who to fight. Which, I'll be fair to him, he didn't realize until literally the point in which he was killed. And then also when he had that conversation with Natsume where he realized his mistake. But this is the whole thing I'm getting at here. Decadence as a show argues not for the working of inside of a false narrative, but its complete and total destruction. That's why it portrays the wall building, in my opinion, as a futile gesture that's just laughed off by Minato as, oh, who gives a shit? You know, the storyline speeds up a little bit. That's what he says as well, the story. will speed up a little bit.
Right.
But it doesn't change it.
You change the story.
It doesn't change it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make anything really that different. And that's also why we see that amazing contrast, which I think is in episode, it might be in episode 6 actually. But it's where, you have the cuts between like the tankers and the gears, and the gears the gears are all like, dude, bro, fat loot, and the tankers are all like mourning the dead.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, like they think they've done a great thing by fighting that fight, but they haven't. And that's why the contrast is there. So that's why I think Decadence is arguing in line with Final Fantasy VII Remake and other similar stories of its ilk, or even Steins Gate, if you want to call it that, where you can't make small, inconsequential changes inside a system because the system will simply just, like rubber, bounce back. You have to rip the whole thing down.
Yeah. I want to argue for the tankers and the sort of the merit of the things that they've done. I mean, I think Kurenai at one point in this set of episodes tells Natsume, value your own experiences. Like, I don't know everything that you've seen. You're saying you're lost. You don't know what to fight for now. Just value your own experiences. And like, they had those experiences, whether they were in the Matrix, so to speak, or not. And I think that there is, again, just like, I mentioned about Subaru, like, those people really did die, and other people really did fight to try to protect them, and they protected some of them and didn't protect others. And, they fought with their comrades, and like, all those things are real. And so, like, I mean, I think they did achieve something from their point of view, and that is important. Like, we're very much privileging the point of view of the system, and of like the total knowledge of everything. But just wanted to give a small shout out to the tankers. Like, I just don't think like that they've lived like a pointless life, even though they're stuck in it. Like, it's not their fault,
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of it, to be fair to them, as much as you said, if they didn't fix the wall, well, more of them would have died.
Yeah.
So it's not so purely in that term, it's not a it's not a bad thing that they did that, but it doesn't ultimately change the game, so to speak. It doesn't upend the rules.
Right.
And I think Decadence's argument as a show is that if you want to effect change, you don't, bend the rules. You break them, you tear them down, and you start fresh. It doesn't advocate for pussyfooting around. Like, if Decadence were to elect, like, to borrow again, unfortunately, from real life, if it were to nominate someone for, like, President of the United States, it'd be a Sanders rather than Biden. Right. That sounds really daft. But you know my point. Like, it advocates for radical change. That's the theme this show is getting. And it shows Kabaragi's failure in doing so with Natsume in such a way that he actually makes things worse for her, makes her more part of it.
Yeah.
Which is, I thought that was devastating, and I could see why he got so angry at it afterwards. Because when she's crying to him, like saying, like, I need to work harder, what he realizes, what he fills in at the end of her sentences, I need to work harder to perpetuate this system that would otherwise, like, chew me up and spit me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you just like, I need to run faster on this No, I was just gonna say, like, I need to run faster on this hamster wheel.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, again, that's one thing I have to credit this show for. Like, I've talked, for example, about the idea of micro and macro level examination in science fiction, where you look at how it affects people and how it affects societies. Decadence is nailing both of them. It's so very human at parts. And I'm not just talking about the actual humans, like Kabaragi for himself. Like, he's suicidal at the start. Like, that's why, I've made many times that the robots are just as much victims.
Totally. And that's a really nice segue into my next talking point, actually. And that is, like, I think that this show walks the thin line extremely well of allowing some characters, I think 4 of them, like, I think Faye, Turkey, Minato, and Natsume at one point, they all say, like, we're happy with the status quo. We didn't want everything to change. Most people say they didn't want anything to change. Minato is like, I just wanted, like, nostalgia, right? Like, I just wanted to do things like we used to. Faye was like, nothing had to change. Turkey also like I just wanted things to keep going as they were. It was enough for me to do the prison and be the big badass in the prison.
What about Sarkozy though? Like give Sarkozy the props he is due, because holy crap, the poor guy, like he is kowtowed into like falling in line, even with this little sub narrative that Turkey's doing.
Oh man, yeah, Sark is like a different deal because like he's like the one. I mean, he's so good. But just to tie a bow on this point, and Natsume too. She's like, I wanted to change myself. I didn't want to change everything. I think in doing this, the show is sympathetic to these characters to a degree that like, and show that there's all kinds of reasons that people would want to not have revolution, to not upend the order of the world, even if it's unjust, to continue with the status quo, because, and it's not just like, so I can have all the money, so I can have all the power. Like sometimes it's like, so I can live a peaceful, small life with my friend and she won't die. And sometimes it's like, so I can feel good about myself. Like I can stay in this prison but I'll be reigning in hell, like you said, right? Even though I know it. And sometimes it's like, so I can relive the good old days. But make no bones about it. Decadence is never saying that those people are correct. It lends them empathy. Like the characters are human and is sympathetic towards their feelings. But it's never like, and that's why we shouldn't have revolution. It still is like, hey, no, what we need to do is break these rules over our knee and break the system and redo it.
It doesn't trivialize the process of going through that and how traumatic it is both for the individual and for the society.
Exactly. Totally. And I think I just credit to this because this is hard to do. I mean, it would be really easy to slip into some like both sidesism and for it to feel just yucky and like the show didn't really have a point of view. But it really does have a strong point of view. But I think it also has like this clarity, right, to see these other people as human and acknowledge, like you said, that like it's human to recognize that this huge change is going to come with a lot of cost and pain and might take away things that I really, really like. And acknowledging those feelings, that they're real. Gosh, man, like, and I'm glad that it does this, because in the beginning I was like really annoyed with Faye. It's like, Faye, like, why don't you help your friend? Like, what are you doing? Why are you like jealous of her? Like, what's going? But like, I've really come around on her and the role that she does play in the greater story. I really like it.
She's not exactly the same as Turkey, but she suffers from the same viewpoint as Turkey, which is, I'm comfortable.
Yep, totally. And I love that she says, like, being around you, Natsume, when you're this way makes me feel bad. Like, that's so accurate and true. Like, I don't want to feel guilty because I like my little comforts. And when you start talking about changing everything, I know deep down that you're right, but I don't want that for myself. Like, it was so cool.
To make a metaphor here, like the truth, as we say, like, I mean, this is again truth and happiness. It's true for like, it's the same for Turkey. It's the same for Faye. It's the same for all of them. The truth can be scorching. It can be blinding. Are you really up for staring straight at it?
Yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
It's true. Yeah,
man. I'm out of talking points. Do you have any more Spring Up Doc?
I didn't, but then you mentioned Sarkozy, and I was like, God, we should talk about Sarkozy.
Yeah, we should. Like, I really, really like what happened with him in the end, because make no mistake, like, there's also the physical element of the cyborgs. I mean, there's the reason that Donatello is able to fight off the game police, because he literally is a gigantic, like, I don't know how to describe it. He looks like something that Eggman would make if he was also like, really, really into cyberpunk.
Yeah.
He looks like a Sonic villain with a little Mega Man cannon. Whereas Sarkozy, as we've joked before, looks like he's out of the film Robots, and he looks like he couldn't like like he looks pathetic. And I don't mean that I don't mean that because I believe that, but I can see how like you. But even he proves, and I think that's why it's important that we see someone who looks the way he does. Like he proves that even he can contribute in a massive way by basically being the catalyst for destroying the ship factory and the Gadol factory.
Yeah.
I have to wonder maybe though, like if the show kind of might have a bit of an off point in that though, in that for weak people like him, the only way to do so is through sacrifice.
I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. But I think that maybe the point I should be more trying to take away here is that ultimately he decided something for himself rather than let it be dictated to him by Turkey. He didn't allow himself to be comfortable. Heck, in fact, he allowed himself to be uncomfortable in the way that it was most difficult. And no, I'm not talking about the fact that he shoved a tank up his butt, which is weird.
No.
But I for all that he was like a side character, really, he got his moment to shine.
Yeah, he's so important. Like, because the fact that he is a side character, like, they can kind of use him to really quickly communicate, and efficiently communicate. I don't know, of like kind of the things that they want to say longer term through longer arcs with the characters. Because, like you said, he was weak. He bought into Turkey's like bullshit that you and I could obviously see through, but like he was pretty easily deceived.
Well, it's like what we said in the answer to Kate's question at the very beginning. It's very easy for us to be like, "Oh, come on, Sark." But if we were in the same situation as him, I can't say that I would act any differently.
I know, like
I don't even know if I'd have the courage necessarily to like give my life for the cause, if you want to call it.
No, totally. And I mean, like he's probably been there with these people for a while. Like they've been in prison together for a while. They're the closest thing he still has to family, and one of them is confiding in him. And so, yeah, that he makes this like authentic choice. And I love that the show has this other refrain. We just talked about the refrain of "It was enough for me. I didn't want to change the world. Living this way was enough for me." This other kind of counter refrain of like, what is it, like pushing yourself to your limits? Like, I feel like therein lies a lot of answers if we unpack it, because that was what Sark needed to hear, like, because he didn't know what to do. He didn't know like the truth, kind of like how he should act. Like, how do I pick? Like, what's the right moral calculus I should use? And like, I think push yourself to your limits. If you take that phrase and maybe take another step or two with it, maybe the idea is like, rather than make some great moral calculation about like cost benefit or pleasure pain or anything like that, maybe the idea is like you kind of go with your gut in terms of what you feel is right. Like however you make the choice, the point is that like you make it really, really hard. Go no limit absolutely. Once you make it, and make it authentically. Like, like Natsume always says, like decide for yourself. And then once you've decided, you pick up the Kaburagi refrain of push yourself to your limits. Like do everything you absolutely can. And that's how you kind of lead this authentic life. And like in the end, Sark was like, he was the best of us. You know what I mean? Like he did some shit, but like I think he was totally saved by the end, like his choice. I mean, not just because he made it happen for real, but like, just in a sense of like the moral weight of his choices. Like I think he ended up being on like the right side of things.
Yeah, even and again, even to the show's credit, even a small character like him, a side character, plays an important part that gels with the overall ideas the show's presenting while making him worthwhile in his own right. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else, Doc?
I don't think so. I mean, I've got a lot of notes, but like, I don't know if I can synthesize them into, talking points.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we'll wrap up then. So we'll rate these episodes as we want to do. So again, this is for episodes 7, 8, 9. Sorry, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Ooh, I feel a bit of consternation about racing these episodes at all because of the fact that my main criticism about the Big Gadol really rests on what they do with it. But I do, however, have to say that even though there is what they do with it, how it was introduced doesn't mesh with the rest of the show anyway. So even if they ultimately course correct and do something good with it, it doesn't actually still mesh with what's going on, unless they go again for the route of, hey, it just got out of control. But beyond that, and beyond my mild concerns about Natsume, Natsume's purpose in the show from a narrative standpoint, it's still as good as it's ever been. It gives me hope it will finish strongly. It really, really understands the reality of how people would act in these scenarios. It understands human nature and psychology, both on an individual and a group level, in such an incredibly, pragmatic way. It recognizes that there will be people like Faye and Turkey who are comfortable in their place, even if it is a place of where you've got very little to your name, where you're literally the king of the shit factory. It's honest about it. It doesn't try and sugarcoat
Jill.
either. It doesn't try and sugarcoat the way in which people would act in these scenarios, nor does it try and sugarcoat the difficulty of change and transition in a worldview. That you go from knowing one thing to knowing another, and your life has been turned upside down. It's very, very human, both for its cyborg characters and for its actual human ones. Yeah. It still looks great. There's still some great comedy bits in it. It never feels like the tone clashes. It's wonderfully consistent throughout. Some of the shots and framing are phenomenally good. They really do feel textured, that they really want you to derive actual meaning from it rather than just being storyboarded as this is where they must be, so we will have them do things here. No, we'll have details that will impart meaning on this scene. So with the small complaints I have, which I hope get negated in the end, I am going to give this block of episodes, and I'm going hoarse now, so this is probably a good time for me to finish. I'm going to give these block of episodes 4.5 out of 5 pipe dog bowls no longer used.
Oh,
I mean, can I just point out again how brutal that scene is, where Kaburagi just literally comes in and Pipe's jacket is there because he's long since gone. We don't even see him go.
I know. Pour one out for Pipe. And I would say
maybe we were the monsters all along.
I have in my notes also pour one out for the Pokemon that is the Gaddle that we thought died, but it very much came back to life. We didn't know, Yuki, we haven't talked about Jill, which is a sad indictment on us because Jill rules.
I'm gonna be fair here. Jill is great, but I think that she's very utilitarian in her purpose in the plot. Yeah. She's there to be the data, if you want to call that, the person who runs the hacker man. That's her plan. That's her role in the show, and she's great in
she
that
is very
respect.
Good
But she doesn't really otherwise serve any purpose other than just simply being the means through which Kaburagi gets into decadence again. That's not me dying her. That's not me indicting her, she serves a function in the show, but that's why I don't feel the need to talk about her all that much. I'm to say that she's cool and I like her design and I like her voice.
Oh, her voice is great. Design is so good. I hope that we get some. Well, I can't decide. Maybe it will be better as a mystery, because who is Jill really? How is she able to do the things that she does? Right?
They originally programmed it.
Right? Is she the architect, or is she?
Oh well, that would explain why she's in prison, because she's too knowledgeable. But then they didn't realize
it's a Robespierre situation, right?
Man,
you were the architect of all this, but you've outlived your usefulness. Now the system is fine now, and we don't need you fucking with it anymore. So goodbye. I don't know if I would rather it be a mystery or not, but no, she's great. She rules. Yuki Nut says, wasn't Pipe a bug? I think similar to how the big bad Nuke Adol, he might have survived. I think it's is he a bug? Because the Switch was just about all the living Gaddle, erase them.
I don't think the new Gaddle was a bug either. Because it still died. It just inexplicably managed to
impregnated the guy. Yeah.
To pull the xenomorph shit, which again it's a nitpick on that. I would feel a little bit cheated if that turned out to be the case that Pipe had survived. Um,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because I think that, is part of the whole there are consequences to these actions
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes, I agree.
I think that Pipe in a similar vein, like we're not meant to think that the Gadol like not all monsters necessarily, but rather I think meant to realize that Kaburagi, like there are things that he is sacrificing beyond simply like his own like life and well-being. It affects others. Like so that's
Hmm.
the way I see it. I think Pipe is just a utilitarian inclusion again to be like for Kabaragi's benefit rather than being like, oh, we should feel bad because Doggo dead. Like,
No,
I mean, we
we
do. Don't
do.
get me
Yeah,
wrong,
I
but
see that.
I think the point is just to show there's a cost.
Um, I'm also going to rate these really high. Um, I the only like time during the episodes that I thought kind of negatively about them. Well, after the fact, what we talked about with the new Big Gattle, I think that's could potentially be not good. I mean, I think even like, yeah, if it shifts the focus away from what's gone before, I think it's a mistake. Um, Not a like show killer in and of itself, but it's a misstep. But the only other time was like at some point during all the stuff that's going on in the prison, they just sort of stopped kind of having the regular shit falling on you work patrols and the guards. I mean, what the fuck were the guards doing? Like that one time it cut to the guard room and they had to turn on the monitors because were they just not watching while this revolution? I mean, and where did they get the dynamite to like do this? You know what I mean? It's like it's at some point they just kind of like were like, okay, whatever needs to happen should happen here, and like it really is a nitpick. You know, I told you I had a nitpick. This is my one and only. Nitpick.
Why does Donatello's gun still work?
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, I'm sure there are explanations that could be had, but it is a thing.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, like, when you get to stuff like this, where it is that kind of nitpicky, this doesn't make any logical sense. Like, the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, does this ruin it for me or not, or is it something I can just let slide? I think that the rule I tend to go with is that it's as important as the show makes it to be. If they, for example, had made a big song and dance about Donatello's gun being disabled and then it inexplicably came back, then I would be really annoyed. But they've never mentioned it, and it just works. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Fine. You haven't made a big deal of it, so I won't either.
But so those are the only two, and you mentioned so many of the positives. I mean, I just love the story of the show. I love oh, God bless me. I love the thematic ground it's treading and all the different things that you can mine from that and we can talk about. I mean, this is a great piece of art. I think it's like so far it is just this advertisement for original anime. Like,
yes,
man,
absolutely. I now that you brought up, I cannot recall the last time I was like this late in the game in a show's life cycle, this enthralled about one that was from an original property. I'm sure I could probably think of one given a long enough time frame, but like a lot of my top shows are those adapted from manga, and we discussed before about the idea of how anime is often written as it is being developed and aired, which is, in my opinion, a mistake. But I understand the realities of production that mean that happens.
Yeah.
Um,
Macross is the only big huge thing that I always think of as like, oh, there's an animated. This is still carrying the flame for original non-adapted anime.
Yeah. I suppose you could throw in there. Like he's done some incredible stuff, of course. But Promare, like,
oh, totally, yeah. That's as a well. So I think they might. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's easier to do it as a film. They're so much more rare. I feel like in television. I think the ratio of adaptations to original works, based on my anecdata, my own personal experience.
Did you just call that anecdata?
I did call it anecdata.
That's incredible. I cannot believe I've never thought that. That's amazing.
It's only we just don't get them in television as often. Yeah, and so Yuki lists a couple of other good examples as well. Not saying every anime has to be original. I mean, there's a place for adaptations. Absolutely,
Absolutely.
both an artistic place and a financial place. But it would just be, I think, more refreshing to see more like totally original ideas become anime TV shows. But no, these episodes rocked. They were really really good. I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna do 4.5. But I'm gonna do 4.5. Unshakable boobs out of 5. Because do you remember that scene when Natsume jumped
no,
into?
no, 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 stop. I need to point out, I know exactly which scene you're talking about. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to proactively bring this up. And we got all the way through. We got to the end. And all I'm going to say is that Kurenai is wearing one fucking amazing sports bra.
She is.
And I will say no more than that.
Well, then I think that's my score. We will not explain it any further.
Yes. So Doc's awarded 4.5 tits to this show. So with that, on that note, let us call it an evening. But if you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more of it, feel free to check us out at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. We've got tons of benefits on there. You can get yourself subscribed to the $3 tier to continue listening to Decadence if you're not already doing so. We'll be back, of course, for our finale in 3 weeks' time. Or rather 2 possibly, even depending on how it goes. I've lost track of time. It's all I know. I just know when Thursdays are because all I like to see is Out of Touch Thursdays. That keeps me going. But point being, we'll be covering that. We'll be covering Showa, Geroko, Rako, Shinjo. Fully finishing off B&A as well at some point soon. And you getting involved, by the way, means you can also help us choose our next shows to cover. So that's certainly a perk.
Oh yeah, that's coming up.
It's coming up. So get on that. Check out all the benefits. Do feel free to take a look. If you don't want to help us financially, that's perfectly fine. Times are tough for all of us. I 100% get that. All I would ask in that case is if you've enjoyed this podcast, just subscribe to us on Twitter and YouTube, the usual places. Give us a like. Give us some constructive feedback. If you didn't enjoy it, then let us know why. Let us know what we can do better. Always up for that stuff as long as it's done in good faith. On that note, from Doc,
Apple Pods. Apple Pods, 5 snakes. Throw them up. Write a review. Just write, it rocks. It whips, rules, shreds, whatever vernacular you feel most represents how you feel. Write it.
It rips, that's for sure. So on that note, we will conclude here. Thank you again, everyone, especially to our patrons who've thrown in questions and continue to support us. We will return for the finale of Decadence, where I'm praying I at least get to say that it ends as well as it started.
Yeah.
But even then, it's still been an incredible show to talk about so far. To you, Doc, thank you for joining me again to talk about this every couple of weeks. It's great. I'm really, really enjoying talking about this show. I'm excited for what comes next. And to all of you out there, I understand that times are shit right now. I've been feeling that very acutely recently. I won't pretend like I've been feeling any better about it. But I wish you all the best. I wish you all the happiness and health that you can have. Stay strong. We will get through this. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And as we often say on this podcast, embrace you, everyone. It's the end of the universe. Have a cracking weekend. Take care.
Bring back the brothers.
I already did.
Squaresoft, bring back the brothers in a new video game.